Thank you. Actually, I have a little, but I'll just be very quick and say that I'm 57, I'll be 58 in September, but I grew up in the ghetto of Chicago. I literally was the 7 children. My father had left home and left my mother with 7 children to raise. And so we had no choice but to be on welfare when I was younger. And at the age of 1, I had an unfortunate situation, sort of, but in some aspects it actually has been something that really benefited me. When I was about a year old, I started running out toward the road, and my older sister, which was 11 at the time, she came running after me, and she tripped on the sidewalk, and she fell on the pavement, and she literally landed on the back of my head, and she crushed my face into the cement. So we were on welfare at the time. We couldn't afford to get my face fixed. We had no choice, but my mother wiped my face clean, and I grew up with a crushed face. And I had my first surgery at age 17. I had another surgery at 40 and another surgery at 42. And I joke about it that it took 16 hours and 3 surgeries to get me to look this pretty. So, so the reason I tell that story is to say that being on welfare in the ghetto of Chicago with a crushed face, I had every reason to be able to say, I've had a lot of unfortunate things happen in my life. My family's on welfare. We're living in the ghetto. I've got a crushed face. Everybody gives me a lot of grief about my crushed face and how I was ugly, and they had a variety of names for me. I chose not to use that. And I was pretty angry, and I could have stayed there, but as I got a little bit older, I made a decision for me that I was going to change me and change my attitude in order to go somewhere in life. I was so driven because of the fact that I had a crushed face and I had gotten so much ridicule from all of the kids. You know, kids were no kinder back then than they are today. We hear all the stories of all the bullying that's going on, and I can tell you I got plenty of it when I was a kid, and so it gave me some drive that I might not have otherwise had. And because of that, I literally, probably age 22, my oldest brother gave me a set of Zig Ziglar tapes. And those of you that don't know about Zig Ziglar, he's a motivational speaker, talks about having a good attitude and how do you really take control of your attitude. Take personal responsibility for it's, if I want to go somewhere in life, it's me that's got to educate me. And it's me that has to get up every morning with a great attitude and go somewhere in life. It's not somebody else's fault, nobody else's responsibility to make me decide that I'm going to take my life somewhere. It's me and my education and my effort that I put into making all of that happen. And so I really started educating myself. When I started hearing those words that I could be anything that I wanted to be, I could go anywhere I wanted to go, those were words that I really didn't have sunk deep into my head when I was younger. And so as I started learning all that, I started reading, I started listening, I really started understanding that those words were true. I could go anywhere I wanted to go, and I could be anything that I wanted to be. And so because I started believing that, I had the opportunity to start 5 companies over my lifetime and take 5 companies national and international. And in 35 years, I've generated more than $3 billion in revenue. A young boy with a crushed face growing up in the ghetto of Chicago came out of that and took responsibility for myself to the point that I was able to generate all of that income, but not even more than that. I've been able to touch a lot of people in my life. And so I gave you all a little card and a little gratitude coin. That gratitude coin is something that I started giving out about 7 years ago. I wanted to touch people in a positive way. I really wanted them to understand that for me, gratitude is the foundation stone of every happiness that comes into our life. If we're grateful for where we're at today, certainly we always want to strive for a better life for tomorrow. But you know, one of the things I had was I had a situation where I built a tremendous life. But every day I kept thinking, when I get to this level of success, I'm going to be much happier. And I would get to that level of success and say, okay, well, when I get to this level of success, now I'm really going to be happy. And I wasn't thinking right here, right now, today, I can be as excited about my life as I possibly can. And then once I realize that, then the possibilities just open up dramatically. And I'm going to tell you a little story. I say all of that, but I also like to tell people that in taking 5 companies, national and international, that means you got to take a lot of risk. And so in doing some of those risks, unfortunately, I'm not proud of it, but I have to admit that I filed for bankruptcy 3 times in my life. I've literally lost everything I've had 3 times. But the difference between me losing everything I had 3 times is that I got back up every time, and I dusted myself off and I went back after it again. And I continued to educate myself. I continued to say, what did I do that I should have done differently? What do I need to do in the future to go forward to make sure that I am successful in the next go around? And so I just kept doing it. You know, Zig Ziglar always used to say that the difference between a big shot and a little shot is the big shot just kept on shooting. And that's the story of my life. I just kept getting up and going after it again one more time. And so this little story I'd like to tell, during one of those times where I'd lost everything in my life, I mean, I literally walked away with my clothes and a few dollars in my pocket from the last business that I had made some mistakes in, and that I went out of business, and I said, I guess I need to go get a job. So I went and got a job. But here's the one thing that they didn't take away from me is my attitude and my willingness to become great at anything that I did. I got a job for a company called LDDS. They later became WorldCom. WorldCom became a huge, one of the biggest telecom companies in the world. And I had the good fortune of starting when they were this big, and I stayed with them till they were this big. And over the course of that time, they started me off at $27,000 a year. I'd had a lot of experience, and so that was the top wage at the time that they started me off at. All of the rest of the sales reps in the city I was in were making an average of about, I think they were making $25,000-ish base salary, but then maybe another $10,000 in commissions. So they were making an average of about $35,000 a year. I came in with no experience in the telecom industry, no knowledge of the base of that particular city and the customers, and I started educating the living daylights out of myself. I started reading everything I could. I met with people that had lots of knowledge about this industry, and I started taking them to lunch, and I started asking them, tell me everything you know, educate me till I'm full. And so I did that, and over the course of I worked for WorldCom for 5 years, and in 5 years' time, I won President's Club Award every time I was there because I had a good attitude. I didn't say, oh man, look at what I don't have. I said, look at what I have as far as my ability to go forward. And so one of the first things I did, I was making $27,000 a year plus commission. One of the first things I did is I hired a part-time person to help me with my paperwork. And so all of the other sales reps in the office said, what are you, stupid? WorldCom's not paying you to have that assistant to help you with paperwork, and you're making $27 and you're paying this girl $15 an hour, and this was 20 years ago. And I said, well, I believe in myself, and I'm going to accept responsibility for where I'm going to go. And over the course of that next year, I went from making, give or take the $35,000 that everybody else was making to making $150,000 a year. I eventually grew it big enough over the course of that year that that person became a full-time employee. I was paying her $30,000 a year, but I was making $150,000 a year. All the other reps were making $35,000. I was making $150,000, and I said to them, see? What it made a difference. I took responsibility for myself. I took responsibility for my sales efforts, for my paperwork efforts, for myself to grow as big as I could grow. Now I'm netting $120,000 a year after I'm paying my person $30,000 a year, but it was my responsibility. I paid that out of my income, but it was an investment in me. And I'm here to tell you that if you look at your job as an investment in you, and you become the very best at whatever you're doing, you really work your tail off. You really get good at what you're doing. You have the best attitude, that no one else does a better job than you, and that you absolutely are going to be an exceptional superstar at whatever you do. You can and you will go anywhere in life that you want to go. And I really truly believe that one of the reasons that I've been as successful as I have is I've accepted the personal responsibility of saying it's me that's responsible for where I'm going. I don't care what my boss says. Matter of fact, at the WorldCom, when I worked all the way up to 150